May 9th, 1994, Bridgton, Maine. After finishing a late shift at the clinic, Nurse Laura Bennett called home and told her daughter, "Keep the light on. I'll be home soon." She never made it back. The next morning, her car sat in the driveway. Her purse, her keys, her coat, untouched. Only one thing was wrong. A broken cup on the floor, a window left open, and a single drop of blood on the back door handle. For 12 years, the case sat cold, until that tiny drop finally spoke, revealing a name that would shock the entire town. What really happened inside that quiet house on Highland Road? Tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city and state in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications as we uncover the truth behind the coldest cases. May 1994. Bridgton, Maine. The lakeside town is muted, half asleep beneath a pale sky. Houses line the quiet banks of Moose Pond, their windows glowing softly, halos of lamplight scattered across dark lawns. The air is heavy, barely moving. Summer not yet fully awake, but the last edge of spring already fading. Laura Bennett, 30 years old, hair pulled back, eyes marked by sleepless shifts, steps out of the Freiburg clinic. It's late. She pulls her coat tight, lifts the phone outside and dials home. Her daughter Sophie answers, "Keep the light on, sweetheart. I'll be home soon." Laura listens for Sophie's voice, catches a hint of laughter, a reassurance. The world's safe for another night. Laura drives through Bridgeton's empty streets, headlights brushing past closed shops. The old church, the diner where people lingered over coffee. As she turns onto Highland Road, nothing stirs but a raccoon slipping between trash cans. She parks, takes a moment, breathes. Inside, Sophie has left the kitchen lamp burning. The house is small, almost delicate. Photos taped to the fridge, a pile of laundry waiting on the chair, a calendar with work shifts scribbled in blue ink. Sophie's drawings, nurse uniforms, bright suns, dot the walls. Laura hangs her coat, walks to the sink, pours a glass of water. The silence settles around her, deeper than it should be. She checks the windows, locked. Listens for Sophie's breathing, soft, from the next room. Outside, the street is empty, except for a light in the neighbor's window across the way. Cliff Dawson, old, solitary, probably dozing in his chair. Nothing unusual, just another night. At 11:43 p.m., a neighbor hears a faint crash, glass shattering, then silence. The lamp in Laura's kitchen flickers, a moth circling, trapped between the shade and the bulb. The world turns, slow and uncaring. Somewhere in the darkness, a figure moves along the edge of the yard. The grass barely whispers under his feet. A shape, just out of view. The kitchen window is open now. A cup lies broken on the floor. The lamp still glows. The night stretches on. Minutes become hours. Sophie sleeps. Laura's coat stays draped on the chair. In the quiet, something shifts. Subtle, easy to miss, but final. Morning. Sunlight breaks through blinds, painting long stripes on the kitchen tiles. The house seems unchanged. The car is still in the drive. The keys sit on the counter, Laura's purse beside them. The only sign, a shattered cup, a kitchen window opened wide, the faintest trace of cold air where warmth should linger. No one notices at first. The neighbor, Cliff, sees the lamp burning late but shrugs it off. In towns like Bridgton, people trust the silence, believe in their own safety. Until something cracks, until the silence becomes a wound. By the time the news begins to spread, the details are fixed. A mother missing, a daughter waking to an empty house. The police arrive, take photographs, shards of glass, a coat, a cup, the echo of a life interrupted. A question hangs in the air. What really happened inside that house on Highland Road? For now, the town waits. Doors are locked, lights left on, and the story of Laura Bennett begins not with answers, but with absence. A space where her voice should be, a room still lit, waiting. Bridgton, Maine, is the kind of town where people know the rhythm of each other's days. Morning sun hits the lake in sharp diamonds. The woods crowd in close behind tidy houses, and neighbors wave even when they barely speak. There is a sense of routine, of safety passed down through generations. Until a crack forms, and what was taken for granted slips away. Laura Bennett fit into this landscape like a steady note in a quiet song. 30 years old, single mother, nurse. Her hair usually tied back, her voice low but certain. The kind of calm that patients trusted in moments when pain and fear made the world tremble. Laura worked long hours at the Freiburg Clinic, taking the late shifts, sometimes swapping with coworkers, so someone else could catch a school play or a family dinner. She rarely complained, only joked about living at the clinic more than at home. People admired her stamina. They didn't always see the exhaustion she carried home. Sophie Bennett, 12, was the center of Laura's world. Sophie was quiet, sharp-eyed, her notebooks full of drawings, her mother in a nurse's cap, their house in the background, a swirl of colored pencils trying to make sense of things. She was a kid who made up stories, left the porch light on for luck, and sometimes waited up for her mom to come home, too proud to admit she was scared of the dark. Her father, Tom Bennett, lived in Portland. After the divorce, his visits became a routine. Friday afternoons, a stop at the diner, then ice cream by the lake. Tom and Laura had settled into the brittle truce of shared custody, each trying to smooth the rough edges for Sophie's sake. Their house on Highland Road was modest, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen where everything had its place. The living room was small but full of warmth. Photos of Sophie growing up, report cards tacked on the fridge, a hand-me-down couch that Laura kept patching with colorful throws. It was a home built not of money, but of effort and careful love. Next door, across the street, lived Cliff Dawson. He was 71, retired from the paper mill, slow-moving but observant. Cliff had a habit of checking his mailbox several times a day, even on Sundays, and sometimes wandered over to help Laura patch the roof or shovel the walkway. He claimed not to gossip, but he noticed things. He told police later that on the night Laura vanished, he saw the kitchen light burning after midnight, a detail he couldn't shake from his mind. There were others, too, who made up the background of Bridgton. Michael Hutchins, a former patient of Laura's, who had once come into the clinic loud and angry, demanding more painkillers. He made some people uneasy, though nothing had ever been proven against him. There was the sense, unspoken, that people in pain sometimes acted out, and the nurses learned to be both kind and cautious. Life in Bridgton before Laura disappeared had its small dramas. The postman's dog barking at the crows, kids skipping rocks on Moose Pond, Friday nights at the drive-in theater. Most folks left their doors unlocked. Children biked to the general store for candy, and people trusted the dark to hold nothing more than crickets and the wind in the trees. But after Laura vanished, that trust fractured. At first, it was small things. Neighbors drawing their curtains earlier. Parents reminding kids to come home before dusk. Then it deepened. Conversations at the diner changed tone. People wondered, if someone like Laura isn't safe, what does that mean for the rest of us? The comfort of routine twisted into anxiety. Yet under the fear, there was also a stubborn warmth. Volunteers organized searches at Moose Pond. People brought casseroles to Laura's sister's house, left cards in Sophie's backpack at school, tried to hold up hope. The human ties that had been almost invisible before, the everyday gestures, the small favors, grew stronger in the absence Laura left behind. And so Bridgton was altered, its story quietly rewritten. It was still a place of sunlit mornings and quiet streets, but now every shadow seemed to hide a question, and every silence ached with what was missing. May 10th, 1994. Morning creeps into the Bennett house as if nothing is wrong. Sunlight falls across Sophie's bedroom wall, filtered through the old lace curtains her mother washed every week. She wakes to quiet, the kind that feels off, not just the hush of a sleeping house, but something missing at the center. Sophie calls out, waits. No answer. She pulls on a sweatshirt, feet cold against the kitchen floor. The house smells faintly of last night's coffee and lemon cleaner. Laura's bed is empty, made the way she always left it before her late shifts. The car is still in the driveway, beads of dew on the windshield, keys glinting on the kitchen counter beside her mother's purse. Undisturbed, wallet inside. Laura's coat hangs neatly on the chair. Sophie moves through the house with mounting dread, each step slower than the last. There's a cup shattered on the kitchen tiles, swept partly beneath the table. The window over the sink is open, its frame chipped, cold air drifting in. The silence grows heavier. On the back door, just above the handle, is a smear, a rust-colored mark, small but unmistakable. Blood. Sophie blinks at it, unsure if her eyes are playing tricks. She traces the edge of the porch with her gaze, sees a single line of muddy footprints leading away toward the woods. The prints are large, not her mother's, not hers. There's no note, no sign of packing, no message left behind. Sophie checks every room, half expecting to find Laura napping, reading, maybe fixing something in the bathroom. Nothing. The stillness is absolute, broken only by the ticking of the kitchen clock. At 7:14 a.m., Sophie calls her aunt in Augusta, her voice thin and trembling. By 8 o'clock a.m., the Bridgton police arrive. The responding officer, Patrolman Royce, steps quietly through the house, notebook in hand, gloves pulled tight. He notes the details with clinical precision. Purse present. Car in driveway. Keys, wallet, coat untouched. Blood smear on back door handle. Muddy footprints, single set, adult size, leading toward woods. Cup shattered, glass fragments swept aside. No signs of forced entry. No furniture overturned. Nothing taken or broken beyond the cup and the open window. The bedroom is untouched. Sophie's drawings on her desk. Her mother's nightgown folded on the pillow. Royce photographs the evidence. Angles of the broken cup, the open window, the blood on the door. He dusts for prints, collects samples, fibers from the windowsill, glass fragments, a faint hair clinging to the coat on the chair. Everything bagged, tagged, logged. The process is cold, methodical, every action scripted by protocol, every gesture measured. Detective Mulroney arrives before noon, gray-suited, carrying the gravity of bad news. He asks Sophie careful questions, writes each answer in blue ink. Sophie tries to remember. When did she last see her mother? Did she hear anything strange? Did anyone come to the door? She shakes her head, voice small. Police canvass the neighborhood. Cliff Dawson confirms he saw the kitchen light burning near midnight, but didn't notice anything else. No one else heard a struggle. No one saw a stranger on Highland Road. No barking dogs. No shouts. Only the faint sound of glass breaking, quickly swallowed by the night. Forensic technicians walk the yard in slow, overlapping arcs. They mark the muddy prints, take plaster casts, photograph everything. One boot print, size 11, deep in the wet soil by the porch. The rest fade as they reach the tree line. The woods behind the Bennett house are dense, spring leaves just beginning to show, ground soft from recent rain. The lead detective records in his log. No evidence suggests voluntary departure, absence of struggle, evidence of entry through kitchen window or door. Blood on back door handle likely not self-inflicted. Muddy prints not consistent with victim's shoe size. By noon, Laura Bennett is listed as a missing person. Suspicious circumstances. The words are stark, clinical. Sophie sits in the living room, arms wrapped around her knees, watching the officers carry out evidence bags as if in a dream. Police tape is strung across the front door. Neighbors gather at a distance, their faces pale. Bridgton's peace is gone, replaced by the chill of uncertainty, the cold logic of a forensic search for answers. The house grows quiet again as afternoon slides toward evening. In the evidence vault, each object waits. A broken cup, a blood sample, a plaster cast, a single dark hair. The puzzle is only beginning, and every piece is colder than the last. By noon, the news has swept through Bridgton like a cold front. The nurse who vanished. Laura Bennett's absence is not just a private wound. It becomes the quiet center of every conversation, every whispered worry in the grocery store aisle, every sidelong glance between neighbors. Doors that once stood open are closed now. Locks click into place before dusk. The search begins with volunteers, ordinary people clutching flashlights and maps, their boots sinking in the muddy banks of Moose Pond. They move in slow lines, eyes searching for any sign. A footprint, a piece of fabric, a glint of jewelry in the undergrowth. Some call Laura's name until their voices are raw. Others fall silent, the woods swallowing up hope with every passing hour. Sophie is sent to Augusta, to her aunt's house. A stranger's bed, a suitcase packed in haste, the kitchen lamp left burning back home. She leaves a note by the window, in her round, careful handwriting. I'll be home soon. Love, Mom. Each night, Sophie insists the lamp must stay on, the way Laura liked it. She believes, fiercely, that light can call her mother back through the dark. Tom Bennett returns from Portland, face drawn, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. He stands with police in Laura's driveway, his hands trembling when he thinks no one is looking. The old wounds of divorce reopen. Guilt and worry knot together, impossible to untangle. He answers the detective's questions with a voice that barely rises above a whisper. Local papers print the story in bold. The nurse who vanished. A photograph of Laura, serious, unsmiling, hair pulled back, appears above the fold. Journalists knock on doors, scribbling quotes that will be picked apart in living rooms and at church potlucks. Every detail becomes fuel for speculation. Rumors multiply. Some say Laura ran away. Others whisper about a stranger passing through, or an ex-husband with too much anger. In the diner, voices drop when someone from Laura's circle walks in. It becomes harder to tell truth from fear. Bridgton changes overnight. Curtains are drawn tighter. Parents call their children home early, forbid them from walking alone, even in daylight. The routines of daily life, work, school, church, continue. But there is an undercurrent of anxiety. What was safe feels fragile. Even the familiar sounds of the lake at night, the calls of loons, the rustle of wind, are newly ominous. For the Bennetts, the house on Highland Road is no longer a refuge. Sophie's drawings gather dust on the fridge. Laura's coat remains on the chair, untouched, the faint smell of her perfume lingering. The light in the kitchen burns into the early morning hours, a signal to no one. As days turn into weeks, the search parties grow smaller, hope thinning with each unanswered question. Sophie, in Augusta, clings to routines, school, dinner, bedtime, but the world is off balance. She writes letters to her mother, tucks them into her pillow, convinced somehow that words can cross whatever distance now separates them. Detectives keep working, but every day with no news feels like another door closing. Tom calls the police daily. He drives the old route from Portland, stares at the house, the porch light, the growing weight of silence pressing in from all sides. In Bridgton, trust is broken. The town watches, waits, wonders if safety can ever return. And through it all, the memory of Laura Bennett, a devoted nurse, a mother, a neighbor, casts a shadow that only grows longer as the days pass. The Bennett investigation officially opened at 9:12 a.m., May 10, 1994, recorded under case file A94-3117. From the start, every detail was documented, every timeline constructed and reconstructed, as if somewhere inside the evidence, the missing hours would finally reveal themselves. Lead Detective Mulroney began with the immediate circle. He spoke first with Tom Bennett, Laura's ex-husband. Tom arrived from Portland, his answers clipped, eyes rarely meeting the detective's gaze. The divorce, finalized 2 years earlier, had left both parties brittle. Tom admitted he and Laura had argued about custody, but insisted he'd been in Portland that night, alone, watching late television. Detectives verified his alibi. A neighbor recalled seeing Tom's car parked outside his apartment until after midnight, and a convenience store receipt placed him near his home at 11:15 p.m. Still, suspicion lingered. In cases like this, the ex-spouse is almost always questioned first. Next, Mulroney turned to the neighbor, Cliff Dawson. Dawson, 71, lived directly across from the Bennett house and was the last known person to see Laura's kitchen light burning. He'd been up late watching baseball on a small black and white set in his living room. Cliff's story didn't waver. He saw nothing out of the ordinary, no visitors, no movement, just the kitchen lamp shining stubbornly against the dark. Police searched Cliff's property, looking for anything out of place. Nothing surfaced. As the week wore on, focus widened. Laura's co-workers at the Freiburg Clinic spoke of her kindness, her willingness to trade shifts so others could rest. One nurse, Carolyn Flynn, mentioned an incident a few weeks prior. A man had come into the clinic, shouting at Laura about painkillers. She had stood her ground, refusing to prescribe more than what his records allowed. His name was Michael Hutchins. Michael Hutchins, 34, was known to police. A history of disorderly conduct, minor assaults, a reputation for a bad temper. Detectives brought him in for questioning. Hutchins admitted being upset with Laura but denied seeing her outside the clinic. His alibi was thin. He claimed to have been home alone, drinking, the night Laura disappeared. Neighbors couldn't confirm his whereabouts after 8 p.m. Evidence collection was painstaking. The kitchen yielded several items for the lab: a drop of blood on the back door handle, documented, photographed, scraped into a sterile vial, a single dark hair found on Laura's coat, not matching her DNA, and a muddy boot print on the porch, size 11, pressed deep into soft soil. The boot print was compared to shoes owned by Tom, Cliff, and Hutchins. Only Hutchins wore a size 11, but the make was common and the tread pattern inconclusive. Inside the house, police found no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no torn clothing, no scattered belongings. There was only the broken cup, the open window, and the eerie orderliness of Laura's untouched possessions. The forensic team dusted for prints, collected fibers, vacuumed the carpets for trace evidence. But in 1994, forensic technology was limited. DNA testing required weeks, sometimes months, and even then, results were often frustratingly vague. A timeline was built. 10:58 p.m. Laura calls Sophie, promises to be home soon. 11:22 p.m. Laura leaves Freiburg Clinic. Security camera records her car pulling out. 11:35 p.m. Car seen on Highland Road by patrolman en route to another call. 11:43 p.m. Neighbor hears glass breaking. 12:10 a.m. Cliff Dawson sees kitchen lights still on. After midnight, nothing. No witnesses. No further sounds. The woods behind the Bennett house were searched for any trace: clothing, footprints, disturbed ground. Police dogs picked up a faint scent trail but lost it near a stream, the spring runoff washing away clues. Days turned into weeks. Investigators interviewed everyone: friends, colleagues, patients. A few pointed fingers at Tom. Others whispered about Hutchins. Some suspected a stranger, a drifter passing through. But nothing concrete surfaced. Back at the station, the evidence board filled with photos and lists. Tom Bennett, alibi, strained relationship, no physical evidence. Cliff Dawson, elderly, no motive, nothing suspicious found. Michael Hutchins, motive, temper, weak alibi, size 11 boots. Additional evidence was logged: fiber samples from the windowsill and couch, partial fingerprints on the kitchen sink, none matched to known suspects, a hair sample not belonging to Laura or Sophie. A sense of frustration settled over the team. Each clue was a thread, but none tied together tightly enough. With no body, no witness, and no confession, the case stalled. By October, as autumn closed in, the Bennett file was quietly marked: missing, open investigation. A final note, scrawled by Mulroney on the last page before the case went cold. The offender may be someone familiar, very familiar. Laura Bennett's house remained empty, the kitchen lamp burning late into each night. And somewhere, among the suspects, the truth sat silent, waiting. Time passes in strange ways for those left behind. In Bridgton, the rhythm of the town resumes, slow but inevitable. Leaves change color. Children return to school. Moose Pond freezes and thaws again. The Bennett house stands untouched, curtains always drawn. The kitchen lamp, once a beacon, gathers dust on its shade, its bulb flickering only when someone remembers. Inside the evidence vault at Maine State Police Headquarters, a brown folder sits among hundreds. A94-3100 scene. Bennett, Laura. Its edges are softened by handling, its label beginning to curl. Inside, the story is fragmented. Polaroids of a shattered cup, the inventory of a mother's life, swabs sealed and signed, a silver necklace, chain broken, a boot print in plaster, a single dark hair taped to a card. The cold years are measured not in days, but in absence. Each May 10th, Sophie Bennett, growing older, her face lengthening into adulthood, calls the sheriff's office. Sometimes she is polite, sometimes angry, sometimes she just cries. Her message is always the same. Please, don't close my mother's case. Nothing changes. The phone records, the lists of suspects, the plaster cast of a boot, the dark hair in a plastic bag. They all remain, locked away in darkness. DNA evidence, expensive and slow, sits in freezers, samples stacked like memories that refuse to fade. Budget cuts mean fewer cold case detectives. Leads dry up. Witnesses move or die. No new tips come in. No new evidence emerges. Some years, a detective makes a half-hearted call, checks a name, runs a background check on Michael Hutchins, still living in Maine, still in and out of trouble, but nothing new. Tom Bennett remarries. Cliff Dawson dies quietly in his sleep, leaving his house to his nephew. Time rolls forward, relentless, indifferent. The world outside keeps moving. Technology advances. Cell phones become common. The internet grows. But for the Bennett case, time stands still. Sophie finishes high school, then college. She changes her name for a while, wants to disappear too, but always comes back, always calls on May 10th. Please don't forget her. In her aunt's house in Augusta, Sophie keeps Laura's coat, folded in the back of her closet. She sleeps with one of her mother's old scarves beside her pillow. Sometimes, she wakes from dreams where Laura is just out of reach, standing by the kitchen window, light shining behind her, face turned away. In the Bridgton police station, the file grows heavier with dust, not answers. The officers who once worked the case retire, their notes left behind like faded fingerprints. The new detectives glance at the file, shake their heads, move on to newer crimes. Time is a thief. It erases faces, blurs memories, softens the outlines of grief. Still, every year, on the anniversary, Sophie lights a candle and sits by the window. She tells herself that light can cross any distance. She listens for her mother's footsteps, the soft creak of the porch, the sound of keys in the lock. But the house is silent. Only the clock ticking in the hall, counting seconds no one can reclaim. For 12 years, Laura Bennett's name sits in the cold case files of Maine. A folder among many. A question with no answer. A daughter growing older, holding on. And every night, somewhere, a light stays on, waiting. June 2006. The air in Maine is thick with heat. A different season, a different world than the night Laura Bennett vanished. In Augusta, the state crime lab hums with new machinery, computers glowing, technicians in latex gloves logging evidence, barcodes replacing handwritten tags. In a corner office, a forensic scientist named Amanda Voss scrolls through a backlog of cold cases. There's pressure now. Grants, public interest, the unspoken promise that technology can reach backward into the dark. On her list, Case A94-3117. Bennett, Laura. She retrieves the brown folder, brittle with age, and reads the old summary. Missing mother, kitchen blood, a boot print, nothing more. The evidence bags are cloudy, but their contents are intact. She logs the items one by one into the system. The biggest change is CODIS, the combined DNA index system. Upgraded, interconnected, relentless in its search for matches. In the lab's freezer, Laura's case is just one of hundreds. But Amanda Voss moves it forward, slotting the dried blood sample from the kitchen door into the sequence for analysis. Automated processes begin. A technician punches a fragment of blood into a tube. Reagents swirl. DNA unspools under a lens finer than any eye. Strings of code and chemistry resolve into a profile. It's methodical, cold, forensic. The system flags a match. Amanda double-checks. She reads it again. Michael Hutchins. He's 41 now. The database lists a recent arrest for assault in Bangor, domestic violence, girlfriend's bruised arm, blood drawn for booking. His DNA, taken in 2006, was just added to the national system, and it matches the sample left on Laura's back door handle in 1994. A clear genetic profile. Zero ambiguity. Amanda prints the results, hand trembling for the first time all day. The cold case squad reassembles. New faces, old files. Detective Rachel Maynard pulls the Bennett file from the shelf, lays it flat beneath the lab results. The room is quiet as the evidence is reviewed again, this time with sharper eyes. Michael Hutchins had been a suspect from the start. Known to police, bad temper, history of disputes with Laura over painkillers. She had refused him opioids after noticing signs of misuse. He'd shouted, threatened, followed her to her car one night, then vanished into the background noise of other troubled men. Back then, it was just a hunch. Now, it's science. They dig up Hutchins's records. He's been in and out of jobs, addresses, police reports. Never charged with anything more serious than assault. The timeline clicks into place. Hutchins was in Bridgton in 1994. No solid alibi. Boot size matches the print found at the scene. Now, DNA puts him in Laura Bennett's kitchen. Detective Maynard contacts Bangor PD. Michael Hutchins is picked up on a minor parole violation and transferred to Augusta for questioning. The room is windowless, camera recording. He sits slouched, hands cuffed, eyes flicking from one detective to the next. "We matched your DNA to a crime scene," Maynard says. "Laura Bennett, May 1994. Hutchins' jaw clenches. He shrugs, tries for nonchalance. "I never met her, never been to her house." The denial is flat, automatic. The detectives press harder. Timeline, motives, threats, the old report from Freiburg Clinic. Hutchins says nothing, eyes sliding away. His attorney calls for a break. In another room, the evidence is lined up for review. The blood sample, now definitively linked to Hutchins. The muddy boot print, size and tread consistent with his work boots in 1994. The threatening phone calls to Laura, logged by the clinic, traced to a payphone near Hutchins's old apartment. Each detail clicks, one after another. The file no longer just a stack of unanswered questions, but a pattern emerging, bright as a crime scene illuminated by camera flash. News travels fast. Sophie, now 24, is called in to identify records, confirm old stories. She listens, stone-faced, as the case she's carried for half her life is unpacked on a table. The past feels raw and present, more real than memory. Prosecutors review the findings. No body has been found, but the evidence, The science speaks in Laura's place. The district attorney greenlights charges, and then a final twist. The DNA database, running quietly overnight, pings again. A second match. A trace amount of blood found under Laura's fingernails in 1994. Preserved, almost forgotten. Matches Hutchins, too. Suddenly, everything that was once uncertain sharpens into focus. A single drop of blood. A memory of violence, preserved in cells. A case frozen in time, now burning bright. Justice, long dormant, begins to stir. The new evidence transforms the case. For the first time in 12 years, detectives can trace the night of May 9th, 1994, not just in guesses, but in facts. Each step, each choice, rebuilt from the quiet ruins of a vanished life. They assemble the timeline like a forensic puzzle, the pieces finally snapping into place. Laura Bennett left the Freiburg clinic at 11:22 p.m. Security footage shows her exiting, tired but unhurried, her bag on her shoulder. The drive to Highland Road is routine, no sign of being followed, no headlights in the rear-view mirror. She turns into her driveway, leaves her car neatly parked, and steps into the house, expecting nothing but silence and her daughter asleep in the next room. Inside, the air is undisturbed. Laura hangs her coat, sets down her bag. She moves through the kitchen, pours herself water, checks on Sophie. Every gesture ordinary. She does not see the back door, ajar by just an inch, or the muddy print half hidden in the shadow beside the porch. Michael Hutchins is already inside. He knows the layout. He's watched the house before, made phone calls from the shadows of the front yard, memorized when the lights go out. This time he enters quietly, through the kitchen window or the unlocked door, waiting for Laura to be alone. Forensic review of the scene. Blood spatter patterns. The trajectory of the broken cup. The position of Laura's shoes. Suggests a confrontation happened almost immediately. Laura may have recognized him, may have tried to reason with him. Hutchins is agitated, his demands escalating. Pills, money, maybe just a chance to control what has slipped from his hands. A struggle. Laura resists, grabs for the phone, or tries to reach the door. Hutchins blocks her, shoves her back. In the scuffle, the cup crashes to the floor, glass scattering across the kitchen tiles. He tries to restrain her. Laura fights back, nails digging into his skin, drawing blood. That drop, found on the back door handle, is left as she tries to escape, reaching for freedom. The attack is quick, desperate, silent enough not to wake Sophie. Hutchins panics. There's blood now, his and hers, a brutal evidence trail he cannot see in his frenzy. He drags Laura toward the back door, intent on erasing his presence, pulling her limp body into the shadows. The muddy footprints, recorded in plaster by the investigators, mark his retreat toward the woods. He disappears into the trees behind the house, carrying more than just the fear of discovery. He is soaked in evidence, his DNA woven into the story he tried to destroy. The woods are silent witnesses, swallowing the sound of his flight. Police searchers back then found nothing. No body, no torn clothing, no final sign. Only a faint trail lost near the stream, where the ground is churned and soft. They theorize now that Hutchins may have left Laura hidden beneath undergrowth or in shallow water, the evidence washed away by spring rain and time. Inside the house, Sophie sleeps on. When she wakes, the world is irrevocably changed. The kitchen window gapes open, the cup lies shattered, the lamp burns on, an ordinary scene rendered strange by loss. Years later, detectives walk the timeline with a new clarity. They follow Hutchins's movements. Phone records place him near Bridgton that night. Calls to Laura's clinic traced to payphones along the route. Boot prints in the mud, consistent with his size and style. Hair found on Laura's coat, not hers, not Sophie's, now matched to Hutchins's profile. They confront him with the evidence. He denies it all. I never met her. But the science is irrefutable. The drop of blood, the skin beneath Laura's fingernails, the pattern of violence, all speak in a language he cannot deny. In Bridgton, the story reopens old wounds. Sophie, now an adult, is interviewed again. She walks the empty house on Highland Road, recalls the last night with her mother, the warmth of her voice, the promise to leave the light on. The community remembers too, shaken but resolute. The details are hard to bear, but they matter. Each one a testament to Laura's resistance, her will to fight, even as the night closed in. Prosecutors build the case. Witnesses are found. Old notes dusted off. The forensic team reconstructs the night on diagrams. Every angle measured, every second accounted for. It is clinical, cold, and yet, beneath the surface, there is grief and the stubborn hope that truth can still matter. The case file, once marked open/missing, now bears a new heading: homicide, charges pending. Justice, so long dormant, begins to move. The kitchen lamp burns again in the evidence photos. The room stilled at the exact moment where everything was lost. And for the first time in years, the story feels less like an open wound and more like a door that might finally close. With Michael Hutchins in custody and the cold logic of DNA connecting him to Laura Bennett's last night, the legal machinery of the state of Maine begins to move. The case file, once dormant, now heavy with fresh printouts and forensic reports, is transferred to the Attorney General's office. In Augusta, a team assembles: prosecutors, detectives, victim advocates. Every fact must be verified, every witness prepared. Justice has waited 12 years. It cannot afford error now. The indictment comes quietly. A grand jury hears the evidence in late September 2006. The blood match, the boot print, the threatening phone calls, the missing nurse and the daughter's vigil. They deliberate just over an hour. The charge is murder. Hutchins is remanded to Cumberland County Jail, bail denied. The news breaks on local TV, the anchor's voice solemn. There has been an arrest in the Laura Bennett disappearance. Preparation for trial is painstaking. The prosecution team, led by Assistant Attorney General Elise McKenna, is methodical. She reads the file end to end, twice, making notes in the margins. The case is built from fragments: a drop of blood, a cast footprint, a hair, and a dozen years of longing for answers. She is determined not to let the gaps destroy the whole. Detective Rachel Maynard, who helped revive the investigation, becomes a constant presence. She walks through Laura's house with the new forensic photos, matching each room to the crime scene evidence. She meets with Sophie Bennett, now 24, in a quiet conference room. Sophie's hair is darker, her features sharper, but the same cautious hope flickers in her eyes. Maynard reviews the story step by step, not for the first time, but with new urgency. The last phone call, the broken cup, the kitchen window, the blood on the door. 40 witnesses are called. Some travel from out of state. Others have forgotten details, but the important ones remember. The nurse's colleagues, the neighbors, the forensic technicians who first entered the Bennett house on a cold May morning. Each is prepped, briefed, and sworn to secrecy until testimony begins. In January 2007, the trial opens at the Superior Court in Portland. Snow gathers on the courthouse steps. Reporters wait in the cold. Cameras set on tripods. The faces of Bridgton etched with anticipation and dread. It is not a case that makes national headlines, but in Maine, everyone knows the story. In the gallery, townspeople and former co-workers fill the benches. Sophie sits near the front, beside her aunt, her father a silent pillar on her other side. The prosecution builds the case deliberately. They call the forensic analysts first. The state's lead DNA expert explains the process, how old samples, preserved for more than a decade, still yield genetic profiles as unique as fingerprints. The blood from Laura's kitchen door matches Michael Hutchins to a scientific certainty. The partial print in the mud, the tread pattern, the size, all consistent with Hutchins' work boots from 1994. The hair on Laura's coat, once unidentifiable, now links to Hutchins. A match confirmed by mitochondrial DNA testing. Phone records are introduced. The prosecutor walks the jury through call logs, late-night threats to the Freiburg clinic, calls to Laura's private number, all traced to payphones near Hutchins's old apartment and workplace. The timeline aligns. Laura's last shift, her return home, the estimated window of the attack, Hutchins unaccounted for in the hours surrounding her disappearance. Detective Maynard testifies to the investigation's arc, the cold years, the moment the lab called with the DNA hit. She describes the evidence process, her voice steady but weighted with memory. The defense cross-examines, pointing to the lack of a body, the gaps in the timeline, the passage of time. But the evidence is unyielding. Every test reaffirms what happened that night, even as the full horror remains hidden by the woods and the years. On the fourth day, Sophie takes the stand. The courtroom hushes. She speaks softly, hands clasped, voice trembling but unbroken. My mother always said that the truth finds a way. I believe it finally has. Her statement, simple and unadorned, cuts through the legal arguments and forensics. For a moment, the coldness of the process yields to something more human, a daughter's longing, a family's grief. Hutchins does not testify. He sits impassive, eyes down, his attorney offering only the defense of doubt. No body, no confession, no eyewitness. But the jury listens, and when they retire to deliberate, it does not take long. The verdict is read on a Thursday morning, snow still falling outside. Guilty. Murder in the first degree. Hutchins is sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. No cheers break out. There is no triumph, only the soft sound of crying, the closing of an old wound, the slow exhale of relief. For the Bennett family, justice is not a cure. Laura is still gone, her fate beyond repair. But now her name can rest. The lights in Bridgton burn a little warmer. People hold their children closer. Doors are locked, but so are the chains of doubt that haunted a small town for 12 long years. In the court record, the evidence is filed away. A drop of blood. A broken cup. A line of muddy prints. And the words of a daughter who waited for the truth. The trial ends. The story does not. In every home in Bridgton, the kitchen lamp is left on just a little longer. This story begins and ends in a quiet house by Moose Pond, the kitchen lamp burning against the dark. Laura Bennett's name leaves the cold case files and enters the memory of a town forever changed. The justice found is not swift, nor is it whole, but it is real, born from years of waiting, a daughter's persistence and the patient work of hands that never gave up. The facts remain. In May 1994, Laura, a nurse, a mother, disappeared from her own home. For more than a decade, her absence echoed through Bridgton. Every spring, her daughter Sophie lit a candle in the window, keeping hope alive even as the world moved on. Evidence gathered, was stored, was nearly forgotten. But a single drop of blood, preserved through years of silence, would speak when words could not. 12 years later, technology reached backward, giving voice to the lost. Science named the man responsible, and a courtroom heard what had been hidden in the quiet details: the broken cup, the coat left on the chair, the footprints fading into the woods. The truth could not bring Laura back, but it drew a boundary between what had happened and what was denied for so long. Her story, once a wound, became an answer, painful but clear. In Bridgton, routines returned, but trust was changed. People learned to look after each other, to notice small changes, to check in on neighbors left alone at night. Sophie grew into herself, shaped by loss, but not defined by it. She learned to honor her mother's memory by living, not just remembering. This case, inspired by true events, is not just about a crime solved. It is about the hidden cost of violence, the way it splinters not just families, but the fabric of a community. It's about the courage to speak out, to demand answers, even when hope feels thin. It's about persistence, the steady work of people who refuse to let silence win. The real-life story behind these pages belongs to Crystal Perry, a nurse and mother in Bridgton, Maine. In 1994, her life was stolen inside her own home, while her daughter slept nearby. For over a decade, her family waited, never knowing, never stopping. Justice came at last, carried by the smallest fragment of evidence, a reminder that time can bury, but not erase, the truth. Let her name be remembered. Let the lesson endure. Justice can be delayed, but never destroyed. Violence steals not only lives, but peace, memory, and trust. If something feels wrong, if you see something, say something. Silence protects no one. For every family still waiting, every voice not yet heard, leave a light on. Tell their stories. In the act of remembering, in the stubbornness of truth, there is healing. If this story moved you, share it. Let the lamp in Laura's kitchen and in homes everywhere burn as a promise: the lost are not forgotten.